There was a fascinating case in Brazil last week where a federal judge, unbeknownst to anybody, had a case before the court that urged the court to detain and criminally investigate a soldier from the Israeli Defense Forces, an Israeli citizen who had traveled to Brazil in December to vacation in Brazil, and the court accepted that request and ordered that soldier criminally investigated. As it turned out, though, that before the court could issue that order, either the police or the prosecutor or someone inside the court leaked to the Israeli government that this was about to happen, and they were able to smuggle the soldier out in the middle of the night to Argentina. And obviously, it's pretty interesting that the person charged with war crimes was in Brazil and then fled to Argentina, given that's where most Nazi war criminals went after the Nuremberg trials and after World War II to hide. That's where all the Nazi hunters, the iconic Nazi hunters like Simon Wiesenthal and others, would find all the Nazis, including Adolf Eichmann in 1961. He was hiding in Argentina. So that symbolism shouldn't be lost. But the reason this is happening is because Israeli soldiers have been endlessly posting on social media. They even got criticized by Donald Trump for doing it. Incredibly sadistic and obviously criminal and illegal actions that they're proud of and that they film and they post on their social media and celebrate with music and dance and jokes and fun. The Henra Jaab Foundation was created in the wake of an absolutely horrific murder of a 6-year-old Palestinian girl in Gaza that you're about to hear about. That was her name, Henra Jaab. And this foundation was created to track down and create dossiers on the war criminals in the IDF who are publicly boasting about their war crimes, and then use the force of the law, nothing else, to go around the world in order to make sure that countries that are signatories to the International Criminal Court and the Rome Statute, and therefore duty-bound to investigate war criminals on their soil, actually do so. And that's what just happened in Brazil. It brought the attention to a lot of people's attention, the work of this group. And just a little bit ago, we spoke to the president of this group, Jaab about the group's work in tracking these IDF admissions of war crimes, the legal proceedings the group is bringing against them around the world, including the one they just brought in Brazil. There are many others. And also the very serious, incredible threats of violence, of terrorism that they are getting, not from anonymous Israelis, but from top-level Israeli officials in public, all as a result of the success that they are now having in scaring Israelis about whether or not they're going to be able to travel freely if they participated in war crimes and publicly documented it. I found this work that he's doing very noble, not just because of the obvious need to enforce laws about war criminality, but because of the obvious dangers that he's knowingly incurring, and that he knew, obviously, before he did it, he would incur. Threats that are very real, given the complete sociopathic willingness of the Israeli government to cross any line that they've demonstrated over and over, and yet he's continuing in this work, and it's starting to have a real effect. And I found the interview very affecting and very enlightening, and I strongly believe that you will too. Here is our conversation with Mr. Jaab. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's great to see you, and I appreciate your coming on.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So the organization of which you're a part is the Henra Jaab Foundation, and it made a lot of big news over the last couple of weeks, in large part because of a success that you had in Brazil, where you were able to convince a federal court that the presence of an IDF soldier on Brazilian soil obligated the Brazilian government to investigate that person for war crimes. He was able to end up escaping Brazil, fleeing Brazil, but it caused a lot of concern in Israel, a lot of anger in Israel, and I want to get into the details of that. But before we do, can you talk to me a little bit about the Henra Jaab Foundation and how it got that name?
Right. So, some 14 months ago, a group of people convened to think of what we can do in order to try to, organize something around the ongoing genocide in Gaza. It was November 2023, and then we started something called the March 30 movement. The idea was to do some advocacy, but also to do some legal work. After a while, we noticed that our legal work is quite developing on an important pace, and that a lot of lawyers are starting to volunteer So we decided to separate the advocacy from the legal work and to create an organization that can streamline everything and focus on litigation. So based on that, we launched the Henra Jaab Foundation. We selected to call it, the Henra Jaab Foundation because of the story of Henra Jaab, a 6-year-old girl that was killed together with her family in Gaza, and very extremely dramatic circumstances. I believe many people are familiar with the story, but for those who are not, to sum it up, Hind was with her family in a car. The car was taken under fire from an Israeli tank. Almost everyone in the car died except Hind and a cousin of hers, also to a 12-year-old. Eventually, the cousin managed to call the equivalent of 911. The people were talking to her on the phone. The cousin died. Hind could take the phone, and she stayed on the call even after her young cousin, also of 12-year-old, died, and she was talking to the ambulance service, and that call obviously was recorded, and you could hear her begging the people to come and take her, talking about how she's surrounded by the dead bodies of her family. Eventually, the whole world was aware of this situation as it was unfolding. It went viral. An ambulance was sent to save her. That ambulance was also took fire also from an Israeli tank, and 2 rescue workers died in that ambulance. And eventually, when Hind was found, she was dead, and some reports speak of some 300 bullets through her body. So for us, this is a very telling event or story to represent what's going on in Gaza since end of October or mid-October 2023, especially because many of the victims have been children. And so this is a bit the idea that, seeking justice for Hind is also seeking justice for everybody who's a victim of this genocide.
Yeah, I think one of the things that story illustrates, and unfortunately, it's by far not the only one, there are many, many like it, is that in war you sometimes have what people in the West have been trained to call collateral damage, where people who aren't the intended targets end up being killed, even though they're innocent civilians. But in this case, and lots of them like it, it seems at best reckless and probably deliberate, given who the people are and what the repercussions of their continuing to live. Let me ask you about this case in Brazil, because that, I think, is really what put this work on a lot of people's radar. We're based in Brazil, so it was an immense story here, a gigantic story, where essentially you discovered, and I want you to tell the story and how this happened, but you discovered that there was an IDF soldier who was vacationing in Brazil, had come here, I think, in late December, the second half of December, and had a long social history record of documenting a lot of these war crimes. And so you went into a federal court and argued to the judge, not to the government, but to the judge, that Brazil, as a signatory to the Rome Statute, is not only permitted but required to investigate the person, to hold him, to see whether or not he's guilty of these crimes under the Rome Statute. And the court agreed with you, and then the Israelis were able to kind of covertly, if they had help from the Brazilian military, we'll find out, from Brazilian intelligence, but able to get him out of the country and have him flee. How did that all happen? I mean, I don't think it was really public until the court order was issued. How is it that you discovered that he was here? How do you kind of get ready to bring a case like that in such a short time while the person is vacationing?
Right. Well, the main important, or the main issue that the main way of operating is that we do not wait until somebody is in a country before we start preparing the evidence. So, as I said, we have extensive data. This data is being analyzed by our legal teams continuously. and we are building files continuously against war criminals or suspected war criminals. So, we have priority lists, and these priority lists are, of course, depending on the crimes committed. What did these people do? What did they actually, commit? And, so the case against Mr. Yuval Baghdadi was already ready. It was already one of the priority cases. How do we discover that a certain person is in a country? It's because they tell us they are. They just post this on their social media. And so our researchers monitor that, obviously. And, you just receive an alert that somebody posted, and they check that post. And then when somebody's posting that they are in Rio de Janeiro or they are in Sao Paulo, then they are in Brazil. So the system that we have internally, the process that we set up is that the researchers then inform the legal teams. The legal teams look at the file and then decide of the action to do. And this is what we did. So the file was already ready on the level of evidence. Obviously, we did some paralegal preparation work, and then we chose a lawyer in Brazil. And we gave them the file. And then the lawyer, of course, completed the file, adapted the file to Brazilian legislation, because you have always two levels to, on the level of the conception of the complaint. You have always the international law and the local law. So the Brazilian lawyer obviously completed the file, did some tremendous work on it, and then filed it. Lodged it as an official complaint. That complaint goes to the prosecutor. The prosecutor cannot but acknowledge the facts and the jurisdiction, passes it to a court. The court actually gave an order to the police to execute. So there was a court order to the Brazilian Federal Police to actually intercept, investigate, and then couple back to the judge to see what to do with Mr. Baghdadi. So this is the situation, and for us, it wasn't a surprise. We knew that sooner or later this was going to happen, because initially in Cyprus, the same thing happened with another case, but then the Israelis smuggled the guy out of Cyprus before the judge could issue an order. So in Thailand, in Sri Lanka, the Israelis smuggled other soldiers out of the countries, even though in these countries the legal mechanism and dynamic is different. So when this happened, obviously, we did not communicate. Most of our cases, we do not communicate about them. So we only communicated when we had clear indication that the subject has been alerted. Because, when we saw that he started deleting his posts, that he closed his profiles, and then we realized that he's on the move, that he has been alerted, and that was the case. So there was a leak, okay? And that leak, we have no evidence where did it come from, but there was definitely a leak to him. And then we decided to communicate. So this is what happened. Obviously, the subject then went to Argentina. He was actually smuggled to Argentina, or taken to. The Israelis openly said that it was a joint operation from the Ministry of, I think, Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Justice.
In Brazil, with the collaboration of the Brazilian Ministry of Justice and Foreign Affairs?
No.
With the Argentine?
No, the Israeli.
With the Israeli? Yeah. The Israeli Foreign Affairs, exactly. So, but did they indicate, do you know whether they worked with any Brazilian military officials? There's obviously a lot of Israel support among the Brazilian right in particular. Do you have any knowledge about that?
Well, one Israeli minister just actually revealed a few days ago that he sent a note to Eduardo Bolsonaro, and he asked him to intervene on this. Eduardo Bolsonaro being also an officer of the federal police. So there are suspicions. I don't want to create theories here or conspiracy theories on this, but the fact of the matter is the soldier was alerted. And there are three possibilities. We know it did not come from us, so it's the prosecution, it's the judge, or it's the police. So it's one of the three. So I don't know. Let's keep it at that. Anyway, when he went to Argentina, we filed the case against him in Argentina. He was then smuggled to Miami in the United States, and then he was taken from Miami to Israel, taken back to Israel. So this is what happened. For us, regardless of this outcome, which can be, I think, interesting from an anecdotic point of view. But on the legal level, what happened is that a Brazilian court acknowledged jurisdiction based on the Rome Statute without any order or arrest warrant from the ICC, which is the first time that this happens. And this sets a precedent for judges everywhere. That's why the Israelis became very nervous. A lot of people do not realize that. It's maybe technical, it's boring, but I think this is the news here, that a judge in a country on the national level said, oh, I don't need the ICC to apply their own statute. I can do that. So far, we have been asking that, but nobody really answered positively, oh, yes, we will apply the Rome Statute ourselves. So this happened in Brazil, and this sets a precedent now. A lot of judges now feel that they maybe can do that also in other countries. So, it always takes that first step, that first judge that will take the risk and say, look, actually, according to the book, I do not need to wait for the ICC. So this is why it's a huge legal breakthrough. We are very hopeful because of that.
Well, I also think it's important to note that it's not just a breakthrough legally, but it's also a breakthrough in the sense that it puts a certain level of fear in Israel and in the IDF soldiers that they didn't previously really have to worry about. And there's been now articles that have appeared in the Israeli press. There's been guidance issued by the Israeli military about where soldiers should avoid traveling, what they should do if something like this happens. This is obviously now something that IDF soldiers are starting to feel in terms of limitations on their ability to travel in the world, something, as you said, Netanyahu obviously, of course, has as well. And for that reason, it's not surprising that the Israelis are becoming very aggressive about you and the work that you're doing because they consider it a threat, and the Israelis don't abide by any ethical or legal limits when it comes to pursuing their interests. If anyone doesn't believe that, you can just take a look at what they've been doing in Gaza for the last year and 3 months. And so you had a tweet that I just want to put up on the screen where you said the following, quote, "When I decided to pursue justice against Israeli war criminals, I understood the consequences. As a father, husband, and teacher, this decision was not an easy one. My responsibility to my family and my students weigh heavily on me. In recent days, following Israeli threats, I've taken time to reflect deeply once more. My resolve remains unchanged. After witnessing this genocide, there is no turning back in the face of such grave injustice. The perpetrators must be held accountable. And in case anybody thinks that you're just being melodramatic or you're talking about random people online who have been saying mean things about you, there was an actual Israeli minister, Amiki Shikli, who threatened you openly on X. Here is the tweet that he posted to you. He said, "Hello to our human rights activists. Watch your pagers," obviously referring to what they did in Lebanon and killing thousands of people by exploding their pagers. It was obviously a direct threat of violence against you, against your group. Are those the only threats that you've experienced and have received, or have you and your colleagues been receiving others?
Well, we have been receiving a lot of threats by anonymous accounts, basically trolling, and we don't take these much seriously. Obviously, we are aware of the risk. And I have before received a video even from an armed person in Israel, with pointing almost his gun and saying, well, pay attention, be cool, Am Israel Chai. But the thing is, this is totally different. And let me be clear about this, Glenn. I don't take this lightly at all. But 3 weeks, maybe we were a bit in denial. But 3 weeks ago, I received also some, advice from the Belgian security services asking me not to travel abroad. Because of what they consider as, quite a substantial threat against my person. So I remember my reaction to the person who was communicating this to me. I was like thinking, oh, what are they trying to intimidate me? Do they want me to stop? I mean, I did not think it came from the Israelis. I don't know. There was something naive maybe about that. Because, I have been involved with this kind of things for a long time. Like in 2000, beginning of 2000, I was also involved in legal action against Ariel Sharon at the time. And here, right? So my information is my way of looking at the world is informed by that experience. So obviously there's something different now. There's something different about how they're doing things. There's something different about how they're looking at the world. And when the Israeli minister, who is from the same party as Benjamin Netanyahu, you have to see the context of the conversation, because what happened is he was posting what he sent to Bolsonaro, who was also tagging me with propaganda material, half-truths, demonstrations, all kind of stuff. I just reacted saying, look, you know what? Why are you acting like that? The only thing, we're seeking justice. The only thing, if you have nothing to hide, just take a good lawyer. It's as simple as that. And then his answer, that was his answer to that. Me saying, just take a lawyer. He said, oh, watch your pager. So for me, it's even like when I see it in this context and I connect it to the other things, actually he's answering, no, we will not deal with this legally. We will deal with this through intimidation, threatening, and maybe acting upon that. I hope not. I mean, nobody wants to, especially a father, like I said, and that. So, yeah, it is not something that you expect, or maybe we should expect that. But on the other hand, considering what was happening in Gaza, but you always think, well, I'm a European citizen in Europe, so it's a different dynamic. Obviously not. Obviously, it's enough to just pose a legal threat. We're not talking about anything else, a legal threat to become a target. But look, the Henra Foundation is not dependent on one person. It's not dependent on myself or anybody else. We have already crossed that threshold long time ago. So there's no way that this endeavor will be stopped. There's no way that anyone, even if I'm no more active or I'm not there anymore, it will not make a difference. This is beyond us even. I don't think it's even dependent on the foundation itself. Imagine in some way, which I cannot imagine how, but imagine they could stop our work. I believe other organizations will do it. I believe other groups, other legal bodies will take this task on. I think this is something that they cannot control. So again, the only thing I can say to the Israelis, we are seeking justice. If people are afraid, okay, I always say, if an Israeli soldier did nothing incriminating in Gaza, they have no reason to be afraid. We know now that there are hundreds of Israeli soldiers in Brazil and in other countries, in Thailand. We're not filing cases against every Israeli soldier. But if you blew up homes of people, if you killed people, if you looted, if you was a sniper and you were sniping at people, well, then you know yourself that you are that you've done criminal stuff. And well, then in that case, of course, we will find cases against you if we are aware of this and if we know where you are. And again, take a good lawyer. This is the only thing that anybody who is decent or he's convinced, because I heard Mr. Baghdadi, when he came back to Israel, he gave an interview to an Israeli paper. And what did he say? He doubled down. He said, I've done and posted a beautiful explosion. And they are acting as if I killed children and thousands of people. No, we know that. We don't know if you killed people, but we are not suing Mr. Baghdadi because we think he killed people. We don't know about that. Maybe he did. But destroying civilian infrastructure, destroying homes of people. And by the way, in the case in Brazil, the plaintiffs were the owners of the houses that he destroyed. And that he's again qualifying as beautiful explosions. These are people, these are journalists, these are people who are, fully civilian, have no contacts with any organization whatsoever. One of them had even a work permit in Israel. So you can imagine the level of screening that you undergo before getting that work permit. One of our main plaintiffs, who is now living abroad, and that's why he dared, because many people do not dare to file cases. So I want to say, these people do not have a sense of justice because they believe that, okay, you only have to kill children or kill people to be maybe called, and not surely, in their perspective, called a criminal. But criminal law international criminal law, but also war crimes, is a whole spectrum of things. And for us, somebody who destroyed a whole neighborhood and is boasting about it is a war criminal. And this is what also the judge saw, because the proof was damning. We have picture of him planting the explosives. We have the video of the explosive. We have what he was saying afterward. It was filmed from several angles. And he posted that all. And other soldiers, of course, from his same platoon. So this is what I want to say. This is not going to stop. I personally decided for myself that I'm not going to stop. But even if I did at a certain moment feel, I cannot take it anymore, believe me, the work does not depend on that. The work will continue. And I believe justice is coming. And again, justice is in the interest of everyone, including these Israeli soldiers who now are acting as if they are not human. Because that attitude of we are untouchable, we can do whatever, this is not human, and this is what a friend of mine told me recently. He said, we we are actually rehumanizing them by holding them accountable. We are telling them, you are human beings, just like anybody else. You can also fear. You can also feel, oh, I cannot just post things like that and think that I'm above humanity and above the law and above everything. So for the future of everyone, including them, including their children, this is important work. And I believe people will see that one day.
Yeah, there was actually some recent psychological studies published in the Israeli media that documented how a lot of IDF soldiers start getting God complexes when they enter into Gaza because they can kill anybody they want, they can order people to do whatever they want, they can blow up whatever they want. And that is extremely toxic and unhealthy for human beings. Of course, you get dehumanized the more you start thinking that you have absolute power, that nobody can hold you accountable in any way. That's just not a healthy way to live. Well,
absolutely.
You know, I don't want to give you false assurances. My personal view has always been that if somebody intends to take action against you, they keep it to themselves. And if they're just frustrated and angry and need to blow off steam, they threaten you over the internet. You know, and I think as everything you just said is something the Israelis are well aware of too. It's not as though you and you alone have some sort of secret that you're about to reveal so that, you know, taking you out of the picture would prevent it. But you are definitely doing risky work. It's work that is extremely important. I have a lot of admiration for what you're doing. Can you just let people know how, if they want to support your organization and this work, they can do so before I let you go?
Well, the easiest way is to go on our website. It's Henra Foundation in one word.org. And you have all the information about us. You have all the information about our cases, running cases that we communicated about, and how you can support, volunteer or donate or any other way of supporting us.
So I know I don't need to say this, but keep up the great work. We'd love to have you back on when other things start developing, and I appreciate your taking the time. All right, bye-bye. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.